Larry David is back in the news again.
That's right. The co-creator of Seinfeld has returned to his contentious ways, this time in the retail arena. Here's NBC's Josh Mankiewicz with more.
Look, we've all experienced bad service before, but for most of us, there's not much you can do about it. Maybe you write a negative Yelp review, or maybe you just don't go back to the place. But Larry David has chosen a different path. This is Mocha Joe's, a small coffee shop serving the west side of Los Angeles. And this is Latte Larry's. Why two coffee shops right next to each other? We went to the man himself for answers.
I was wrong. I was mistreated. I ordered a cup of coffee next door, this Mocha Joe's, and Josh, the coffee is cold. I politely asked for another cup of coffee. He banned me from the store. I couldn't live with it.
So you're operating this place just out of spite?
Yeah, it's a spite store.
All right, that didn't work out well. It started playing something else. But anyway, I'll edit that in later.
Oh, great.
Yeah. All right, for this might be a bit of an awkward start, but I guess we'll just jump in the deep end and start swimming here.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Hey everyone, long time no see. But I reckon a month is long enough of a hiatus for the podcast. I gave AJ some time to decide whether he wanted to come back and do it or not, and you know, he hasn't decided yet, so I miss doing this, and since I'm paying every month to host all the old episodes anyway, I might as well just continue creating new ones. And if my old co-pilot Anthony ever has any interest in resuming the Furlough Files, that is entirely up to him, but I am not going to be the blue guy sitting in the corner holding his breath for sure. So in the spirit of Larry David, let's just continue podcasting, and we'll just have a little spite in our hearts when we do it. So welcome to the new and improved Spitecast with 100% less AJ Slambino. Hopefully we'll find that the more things change, you know, the more they stay the same. So anyone who's new, this is Ben. I'm apparently the last man standing here, so let's get started. I've got my buddy Steve. Are you still there, or are you just?
I'm still here.
Or have you bailed on this whole thing? I guess you are probably one of my longest friends. One of my best friends. We've been
casual acquaintance,
right? Well, on my end, on your end.
No, definitely. We go way back.
Way back to art school, RISD.
Yeah.
You know, and I figured there probably isn't a better person to kind of start this off with than someone that, you know, we've known each other a while. And, you know, I feel like most of the times when we hop on the phone, it's podcast worthy anyways.
That's a good point. That is true.
So I figured we could shoot the shit and tell a few stories.
Yeah. Why talk for free when you can talk for free and record it?
Exactly. I'm out here on the East Coast, accommodating you, because you wanted to kind of, you know.
Yeah, I've got a life out here.
You
man.
do. You have. Yeah, I sometimes refer to you as the luckiest man alive, because you do have a beautiful girlfriend and all the trappings that come with it, and and I don't have a beautiful or ugly girlfriend, and so I'm free to accommodate everybody else. So
that's very kind of you. It's appreciated.
So my 1 o'clock a.m. start time here for this podcast is no big deal.
Hey, is this PG or can we use cuss words? Or are we gonna get...
You can say anything you want. The only things I prefer not to do is talk about politics and religion. And so I figure you and I probably share.
I mean, that's what do you podcast about? That's all anyone talks about anymore.
Well,
that's like people can't shut the fuck up about it. My God.
Yeah, I know. Well,
I mean, do you ever remember when people would just talk about politics 24/7? I mean, it's insane. It's like, you know, like the way we like football. It's like people have taken to politics. Like they can name like every like third string quarterback and punt kicker and where they went to school. And man, it's just crazy how obsessed people have gotten with politicians.
Well, it's like when we were younger, like in our 20s, it wasn't like part of our identity at all, politics. You know what I mean? And now it's like,
No.
that is what people's like identities, or a lot of people's identities are. You'll see like our boy Dave, for example.
Oh yeah.
The only time he ever posts on Facebook is when it's some kind of like I would say 3 out of 4 times it's a snarky like political thing.
Yeah.
And on that 4th time it's like Star Blazers fucking models or something.
Yeah, it's a drag, man. It's just a drag because it's like it's somehow people think like if they have a conversation about it that they're actually involved, but it's like I mean like I think even if you follow a sports team, you can be like, I'm not going to watch them on Sunday, or I'm not going to go to the game, and you can actually like voice an opinion that counts, or I'm not going to buy any merch this year. It's like, oh, you know what? They're 4 and
right. Or
13.
Or for some people, it's even more impactful. It's like cancel my season tickets. Or
yeah. But it's like no matter how little or how much you talk about politics, you don't affect anything.
No.
Like they don't care if you're not buying you're not buying a Mitch McConnell T-shirt or a Nancy Pelosi hat. No one cares.
Well, you
don't
might
care.
You might buy a Trump flag. And I think
that's
the only merch that's out there.
Yeah. He's his own. I mean, that's been 45 years of that guy doing that. I mean, he's a walking, merch, whatever. We're already talking about politics when we said we weren't going to.
Well, we're not, but we're making an observation about politics. And I would say that like these types of people that like post on, like the ones that post on like for Facebook, for example.
Oh yeah.
It's like, it's like what's the point of it? Because you're not one person is changing their mind based on whatever you're posting. You're not converting one person. The only thing you're doing is either starting fights with people, or you're in your echo chamber getting a lot of like attaboys with like-minded people and making you feel better. Like there's some kind of validation to you and what you're doing. But there's not, because those people you didn't change their minds either. They were already there in the echo chamber with you. So it's like it's very weird.
It's don't you think also, I mean, I've never like really gotten involved with like Twitter and stuff, and because it's like it's like I find it weird to just get into arguments with strangers, but I feel like a lot of people who kind of like actually don't stick up for themselves in real life really love going on social media and like picking fights, and like they have that like, because you're not like like the old way of communicating is like you better get what you want to say off your chest in that moment when you're across from the person. You can't do the Costanza thing and think of it on the way home.
Right.
It's too late. They're gone.
Jerk store.
Yeah. But with Twitter and Facebook, you can come back the next morning like blah 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 blah. It's like, oh great, 8 hours later.
Right.
It's like, but I feel like a lot of people.
But also there's way less repercussions to running your mouth. You're not 99% of what these people say online, they would never have the nuts to say to someone's face. So,
I mean that happens. I'm involved with I like cars and like car forums, and somebody's like, "Oh, that's the ugliest piece of shit I ever saw," and they're like, "Would you say that to the person at a car show if they're standing in front of the car? Would you like mouth off like that?" It's like, it's weird. It just it created a kind of subculture of like kind of crazy, tough guys and bullying, and it's so stupid. It's like, just go outside, man.
Yeah, I don't see a lot of use for that on the social media. Social media I feel is supposed to just be a fun thing, or like obviously if you've got some kind of thing going on in your life to promote, or like like it's the way you gain like customers or something like that.
It inherently, I think that the initial concept, it's very fun to be able to access things you're like a fan of. Like it's fun to like see everyone's opinion on a cool movie, or like what they did or didn't like, or like, oh look, there's a trailer, and like.
But the weird thing is, the vocal people are the shitty ones.
Yeah.
So
unfortunately.
So it's not even it doesn't even accomplish what you're talking about, really.
Yeah, I'm surprised you're not on Twitter more. You love arguing.
Twitter is my least of them, because I don't even like. Twitter's hard because when I still like, it's not like an old man thing, like, oh, I don't understand this, but it's like, it's more like, it's just the hardest to navigate. Like if you happen to come across like a comment that's like the middle of some kind of like back and forth, and it's like impossible to sometimes to figure out where that started or where, you know, and then it's just like, it's just not user friendly in certain ways. And
I think the thing is with Twitter too, it's not even like an age thing. I think the people that use it like 6 hours a day, and then the people that casually use it or don't really use it, but it's the ones that are using it all the time. It's that thing when you're like at a party and you're drunk and you're talking to somebody and they're not drunk, but you're like, no, you're drunk too. And like, they're like, no, like, or you're sober and the other person's drunk and they're having this ridiculous conversation. You're like, I'm not drunk, dude. You know, it's because it's like not everyone's on Twitter, like, you know, hours a day. Just, you know,
I would,
like,
I would use it like if I, you know, like if the podcasting thing was kicking and there was enough of an audience to say, hey, we're going to do like a Q&A, you could use Twitter, or like if you wanted to live tweet during like a sports game, or something, or like, you know, like if you were like, if this was a fandom podcast and we talked about Game of Thrones every week when it came out, you could like live tweet during the new episodes or something. That's fun. That's what I would use Twitter for, you know?
Yeah. That's like fun stuff. That I think like that stuff with like the internet or social media or YouTube or whatever, like the fun stuff is great because
Twitter's the least of them, because I like for what I do, like if like, let's say for art, like drawing and painting, it's like there's no video streaming on there. So you can't live stream while you're working. Right. It's not really like Instagram's the image place to post your images. Yeah. You know, YouTube, you can edit together videos that are longer than whatever Twitter lets you post, like 30 seconds or a minute. Right. Like Twitter doesn't allow for a lot of the things that the others allow for me to do. So so Twitter's almost like the same thing as like building an email list almost, you know, and then just like tweeting out a thing or emailing out a thing. I just go new episode out, boom. And that's all I really use Twitter for. Or I retweet other people's shit that I find funny.
I think that's why podcasts are so popular, because you kind of get like more of a feeling of a person, like not just like a little quippy, you know, sound bite.
That's true.
You know,
I definitely would like to move into live podcasts, because I think there's an opportunity there once you've built an audience to like have some interaction also. Yeah. You know, which I think is like the thing now. Podcasts, well, this is why I said it. Podcasts offer you like a like invite you further into someone's life. So like, you know, like you feel like you know these people after a while listening to podcasts, or whatever. So there's like that.
And some of them are fascinating, man. I mean, like Mandy is a big fan of podcasts, and you know, you listen to some of these actors' podcasts, and it's like, it's really amazing when you find out like what goes on in their lives, and like, well, you know,
I like the process stuff's interesting. Also, like if they're willing to talk about things that we, you know, like the behind the scenes stuff and telling stories about crazy shit that happens, and those are always like the fun rides for me when I listen to that stuff, because you know,
because it's not kind of curtailed. Like it's funny, like how like the talk show is kind of like a dead format, because it's like you got like 7 minutes to talk, and like it's all like, what was it like being in Romania?
Well, and in that 7 minutes, you got to promote the thing you're even there for.
Yeah. But whereas like podcasts, you really get a real sense of people. It's really it's a really like interesting thing where like, you know, everyone's like, oh, everyone's got such short attention span, and which is not true. You know, like you see like
the most successful podcast is like most times runs 3 hours. You know, the Joe Rogan one. So it's like,
or even, you know, this is the constant thing you hear in the movie industry. Oh, you can't have a movie that's 2.5 hours long, and then they like cut the movie down to 90 minutes, and it's like, well, it still sucks.
Right.
It wasn't the duration. It was just that it sucks.
The length of the movie should be whatever it needs to be to tell the story properly.
I remember that was like when
there's ones that are way padded out, and there are ones where you're like this could have been a half hour more. I would have loved to know more about this part of the story, you know.
But that was like the most hilarious thing, because they were like, every few years when there's just like a mountain of bad movies, so like they have some like, oh, kids are on TikTok, or oh, it's MTV, or like, oh, kids aren't going to sit down and watch a 3-hour movie, and that was like the kind of prevailing thought, like at the turn of the century. Oh, like, oh, people don't want to watch movies, and MTV, but it's like when Titanic comes out and it's like 3 hours and 14 minutes, and the primary audience was fucking teenagers and 14-year-old girls, and it was like, well, they found the time to watch it over and over again in the theater. It's like
that's the Hollywood, like the decision makers, the people that have lied and faked their way to the top, who know nothing about anything. They think that because people like use TikTok, that they only know how to deal with things in 1 minute. When it's like, well, on TikTok it's a minute, but we also watch, when we put on the TV, we know we're engaging in at least a half hour, an hour episode. And if we go to a movie theater, we know we're in for 90 minutes or to 2 hours.
Absolutely.
It's like we're not going to the movie theater expecting a 1 minute TikTok. It's this stupid thinking that just
it's so funny too, because people who like don't know the industry, like, sorry, I'm going to obviously talk about films a lot, but it's like people talk about, like, oh, if the movie's 3 hours, you can't have as many screenings in a day. And it's like, they're talking about like the time when there were like film reels and you had to like rewind the platters, and it took time between the movie. It's like, it's all fucking digital.
Well,
like,
even
when the movie's over, you just hit play again.
But
you
even
don't have to do anything.
But even when I worked in a movie theater back in the summer of 89 and the summer of 90, I worked in a movie theater. The projectors we had were set up that once it ran through the projector, it spooled it on so that it would just play again. You didn't have to rewind it. It had these like big platter spools, and it would re-feed it onto the platter in the right way, so that all you had to do was string the end back in.
But you had to have like I don't know if it was like this in Florida, but like in New York, you had to have a union projectionist working the theater.
I don't think it's a union, but definitely it might have been union. I honestly don't know.
Like the town I grew up in, it was like, it was outside, it was a suburb of New York City, and it was like the two towns next to each other had one projectionist that he would drive between the two theaters to get them started, because
that's funny.
only he could run the projector.
So they'd have to schedule their times with each other to allow for this guy to like go back and forth.
Totally.
That's
and
great.
God forbid if he got stuck in traffic, then you're like, gotta throw out some free popcorn.
That guy must have been making a lot of money.
I bet he was, yeah. He was very happy.
I remember when we worked at that theater, there was, listen, let me shine some light on the perks of working at a movie theater. First of all, you could run a racket back then. I don't know if you could do it now. One of the rackets was that if you were the guy up front tearing the tickets, if you didn't have to tear them, you could bring them back to the girl in the booth, and she could sell those.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the night, you would split that fucking money.
Yep.
2, at the end of the night, you throw on the house lights and you look for fucking all the money and purses and wallets and stuff. 3, there was tons of free shit. Like all those movie trailers, on 35 millimeter film. I used to take them home, and like right at the beginning of, that was like the beginning of eBay, because I had them for like those summers, and then eBay started popping in like 95, 96, and I was selling those on eBay.
Oh shit!
Along with like movie posters and cardboard standees and everything else. Plus,
my friend
free popcorn.
Was a manager at a movie theater, and we would do this Thursday night screening, like when they got the print in, and we'd 2 a.m. we'd watch whatever movie was like True Romance. Like we'd watch like a fucking movie that it was like before anyone had seen it, and it would be so fun because you just like sit there and like you had the theater all to yourself. It was magic, man.
Yeah,
it was so awesome.
The best time we ever had was we did that for Body Parts with Jeff Fahey.
Oh yeah.
That movie is so bonkers off the wall. And when it's like all your friends in this like private screening in a movie theater at like 1:30 in the morning on a Thursday night. Right. And you're in there with your Subway subs and your bottles of beer, and that movie was so crazy and so funny, and it was like a horror movie that wasn't supposed to be funny, but it was so over the top crazy that we were just like pissing our pants laughing. Well,
I remember that.
We also
that had a great poster and a great trailer, but the movie was like inadvertently really funny.
Right. But we also listen, you remember Chris, my friend. He had the keys.
Oh yeah.
He was a manager and he had the keys. So one night we went to I want to say Circuit City, but it could have been one of those types of places. We bought a video camera with his mom's credit card.
Oh no.
And a tripod. We bootleg Terminator 2 and
wait, what did you bootleg?
Terminator 2.
Oh no.
And Bill and Ted 2. Return the camera and the fucking tripod. And then just fucking we must have sold like 200 copies of those movies.
Oh shit, you never told me that.
Yeah, well, you know.
What you learn on a podcast.
Right. So yeah, I mean, listen, I don't know how that would have come up in conversation back when we were at school. Do you remember I always, when I think about you and me at school, I always think of that picture of you standing in front of the sign.
I love that picture.
That was on the front door. It was like we lived in this big house. What was it originally? A house?
It was originally a house, and it got converted into like student dormitories. But it was cool like because
3 stories, and it had it was just like you walk in and then it tees off to a long hallway either way. If you kept going straight, it was like the living room. But if you went down either way, it was just room after room after room. It was kind of hotel-ish, you know?
Yeah. It was really nice.
It was
actually, it's like hardwood floors, and because the freshman dorms were disgusting.
Yeah. That was gross
house.
with like the fucking one bathroom at the end of the fucking row.
That was nasty.
With just rows of stalls and showers and sinks. Speaking of how nasty it was, I remember my year at freshman dorm. I lived on the same hall with Dave DiMatteo, you remember him, and Phil Carl. So, but we had it was like a 3-day weekend, and somebody Friday night got drunk and threw up in like the stall, and just like missed the toilet by by like a foot, you know, like he almost made it, and then but he spectacularly didn't. So it was like Italian food everywhere. And and like after like a day and a half, I think it was like kind of near the summer months, bro, that whole hallway stank to high heaven. And then we're like, Monday was like a holiday. So there was still no one, you know, because they had these employees that were on staff that would clean the bathrooms after the weekends. And then I think once during the week. And so we were just counting the hours till I think a lot of us went and lived with other people for the rest of that weekend because the stench was just... Why didn't
you just throw some Lysol on it? Or
do you ever put perfume on a pig? Does that ever work?
I'll just mop it up. Oh.
Yeah, that's right. A bunch of 18-year-old privileged college students.
Right, that's good.
Living in a place where when you're thinking, oh, in another day, someone else is going to come clean this up.
Right.
None of us were going to, and there were no girls living on our floor. So for sure, no fucking guys are going to clear that up.
That's you know, I mean, if you take women out of the equation, men descend into fucking like sweatpants wearing, feces throwing, like just shaved apes.
Yeah, knuckle dragging.
I mean, like you know,
crotch sniffers.
I always tell girls, I'm like, you know, like if women were mysteriously wiped off the planet, it's probably like guys would shower like 3 times a year. I mean, like we'd never change our clothes. We'd be like, well, who cares?
Bro,
like,
when my roommate's out of town, you're lucky if there's any pants involved for the the whole fucking venture. I'm like shirtless. I got maybe a pair of shorts with no underwear, and I'm just like free balling. And trust me, it's that pair of shorts the whole time he's gone. I don't know what a shower looks like. I don't know nothing. I'm jerking off in the living room. It's a whole fucking thing. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a zoo. Yeah. I mean, it's just we're terrible. We're awful.
But,
you know.
But back to the back to the sign. So
Oh yeah, the sign.
So you and I were so like rough in that house. We had like a pushing into the wall game. Do you remember that? Where
It was a very simple game. The object was to take the other person and throw them into the wall as hard as you could.
right, we would literally like grab each other by like the lapel, like by like the shirt where like you would say the lapels are or whatever, and and we would get a tight grip of each other. Basically, where we were close enough to kiss, and we would just try to shove, like we were kind of like test the strength thing, or like it was like stand up wrestling almost, and we were just who could power the other person into a wall. And so these hallways were the walls, but they were on the other side of them were everyone's bedrooms. I remember one girl came out one time screaming because all her shit was falling off the shelves. And we put a lot of like Steve and Ben shaped holes in the fucking drywall for sure. So the sign was like, due to like, I'm paraphrasing here, but due to the excessive abuse of the dorm, we were having a hall meeting or something like that.
And like the RA of the dorm was like our really good friend,
like he was
and
in our pocket.
Yeah, and he knew it was us, but he was like, I don't know who did it.
Right, he's had to almost put on like a dog and pony show.
Totally. I mean, it's also, I mean, for context, it's like that's a school where like it wasn't like a party school. It's like people would just have like, they'd stay up for like 36 hours, 40 hours drawing and painting and, whatever department they were in.
But you and I needed, because we were working 36 hours straight on like a painting or a drawing or like,
you just needed some
whatever.
like,
you needed an outlet,
release.
A break.
Yeah. And it was just like, we kind of like different at art school. Like we played football, we played like tackle football, and we like had pushing into the wall game.
Art school was very like, if you can imagine like the soft woke generation we have now, but just at our school. Because everyone was like sensitive and art students, and a lot of them were struggling with their sexuality or coming out or this. There was a lot of that kind of stuff going on, and here we are, where we were like the alpha beta jocks from Revenge of the Nerds.
I remember freshman year, like one of the first couple weeks I was a freshman there, and it was like the teacher, we had you do your drawing, your assignment. It was like kind of like, you'd spend like 20 hours on a drawing or a painting or whatever. It was drawing, I think it was foundation. And then you'd hang them up, and the teacher would just go around, and it was called crit, and everyone would critique your work.
Right.
And it's like, what do you think? And, you should work on this more. You should do this. You really missed the mark here. And it was like, yeah, whatever. And I remember he did it to one guy, and it was like, I just don't think you really hit the mark here. The structure's wrong. It was very kind of sedate. It wasn't like he tore him a new asshole.
Like an attack.
Yeah. And the kid got up, he started crying, got up and ran out of the room. And I was like, oh my God. Like, I took for granted at that point that like while being someone good enough to get into RISD, like a very high-end art school, like you have to be really good to get in. You don't just get in because you wanna. But I also played sports,
right? And you get a lot of that, like the constructive criticism, but it comes out like drill sergeant. A lot of that comes like drill sergeant in Full Metal Jacket, Oh
yeah, like my football coach used to grab my face mask. He would mispronounce my last name, and he would be screaming. He'd have my face mask and be screaming at me, and the spit would be flying into my face and I couldn't move because he's holding my face mask. And he was right. But it was like, that was just kind of how life is. I mean, it's not like, you have to, like, that's he's
only doing that so you don't make that mistake again.
Yeah.
You learn and get better. Yeah.
And I loved him. He was awesome. Like, I loved that coach. At the end of the season, he like put me up for a trophy, and I won the Unsung Hero Award. He was awesome.
You never told me about you were the unsung hero.
Fuck yeah,
I would have called I would have called you the unsung hero for 4 years of college if I'd known you were the unsung hero.
Sometimes not all heroes wear capes.
or pants if the roommate's out of the fucking country.
But it was just something like, it's like this whole concept of like, you can't bully people, you can't do this, do no bullying. It's like, I don't know what planet these people are on, but like, I'm speaking exclusively for guys, but everyone bullies you all the time. It's all just like a matter of like jockeying for position in anything you do in life. There's always, it's not always somebody giving you a wedgie or punching you.
I feel like
but
if you had a really close core group of friends, you were constantly doing that to each other.
Absolutely. I mean, the way, like, I mean, during the pandemic, when I was here with Mandy, she turned to me, she's like, "What's your problem?" I'm like, "I'm sorry, I just haven't seen a guy in such a long time, and I just have to make fun of somebody."
That's what you should have called me more often.
What's that?
You should have called me more often then, because that's our fucking thing, man.
But it's like, and guys just have like, we just have we have a very peculiar way of dealing with each other. But it's all like, it's just different. It's all, and I don't know, it's like weird. It's like they talk like bullying is a lot of times motivates you to kind of do things better in your life.
Right.
Like I was bullied. I mean, I don't know anyone who's gone through life as an adult who hasn't been like, if you've never been bullied in elementary school, junior high school, college, boy, are you fucked when you get into the real world and a job. Because if you somehow dodge that, you are fucked. Because it's not the wedgie thing. It's not getting beat up, but they'll outmaneuver you at work. Because that's what it's like. Everyone wants the next position. Everyone wants to be successful, and everyone will like step over somebody else to do it.
Well, that must for sure happen where you are, like in
oh yeah,
LA and in Hollywood, working jobs like that.
I mean, it's all it's all just it's all everyone pulling every hat bunny out of the hat to get work here, to just say this, say that. If you look at Hollywood, every year you have a litany of firsts. It's like it's the first movie with a guy with a monkey. It's the first movie with like a woman and a poodle. It's it's the first time ever there's been a woman in a movie. It's the first time ever there's been like a Chinese guy that was that was also an acrobat in a movie. I mean, like everything's about a first. Like this is the first. Like they do this with superhero movies all the time. It's a first movie with a woman, a superhero movie with a woman, and then you're like, well, what about all the other ones that came? Like, what about like like Supergirl with Helen Slater? First Marvel movie with a superhero. It's like, what about Elektra? Like it's like just what about Catwoman with Halle Berry? Zip.
Tank Girl.
Like, it's like,
Tank Girl was technically
Tank Girl.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like, oh yeah, no, this is the first time there's ever been.
Wasn't Barbarella a French comic book?
Yeah.
Like come on.
Yeah, I mean, Aeon Flux isn't a comic book per se, but it's very adjacent to that.
It may as well be in the superhero genre. I mean,
I mean, it's like it's giving me a fucking break, and it's like like it's weird that people in my industry, it's weird people jockey for position, like constantly want to be pat on the back for doing something that's not that big of a deal. Like, I mean, like, I always think of like James Cameron and like the movies, like when we were kids, it's like you watch like Predator and you watch like Aliens and no one's like patting themselves on the back. Like, I mean, I don't ever remember somebody being like, well, Predator is the first movie that has a Native American special forces operative in it. Like, it wasn't even like mentioned. He was just in it. Like Billy, the Native American special ops for like, really capable soldier is just in the movie, and that's it.
Right.
Too bad. Like, we're not gonna pat ourselves on the back for it.
We were talking about how sci-fi is always been like at the forefront of diversity without an agenda.
Yeah,
and we were talking about how crazy it was that Predator in the 80s not portray like there's a difference between diversity in a movie. Where the movie's in the future, and you're like, well, in the future, everyone will be equal anyway, so this makes sense. Mm-hmm. But this movie took place in the 80s.
Yeah, it was modern times.
Right, and it was like, man, that cast is diverse,
Yeah, like even, I was watching a clip of Heartbreak Ridge the other day, and it's like, oh, I forgot about that. Like, you go in Heartbreak Ridge with Clint Eastwood. It's like he goes to the barracks, the Marine Corps. It's like, 2 Latin guys, African American actors. It's like, it's not just like he walks into the barracks and it's all white dudes. It's like this was the 80s. This was like, it was like a thing where like Hollywood has always been progressive. It's always been pushing, like I think to advance, like I think also the reason it did it is because they wanted to push talented people. Like let's just put talented people in front of the camera. Who cares who the hell they are?
Well,
no one cares.
Well, but
like it's
but like if you're trying to portray realism in your movie, like in World War II, obviously most of it was white people.
Yeah.
But as you started to get like Vietnam, it was like, well, now you're like, well, a majority of you or a higher percentage of your recruits were like Hispanic and black and whatever. You know, for a lot of reasons.
Right.
You know, to get out of your life situation or you know, college, whatever, or there were a lot of reasons where the minority recruitment was much higher.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even if like another example is you look at like, you know, the Iwo Jima, like the famous photograph of them raising the flag at Iwo Jima. One of the soldiers was Native American. Like there is even in that war, there is examples of it. It's not widespread because it was just a different time, but there are very famous examples of people who, you know, shined in that war.
Well, was that where they were using the code breakers?
That was just
but where natives were used.
Yeah, that it's funny because it's the same actor in both movies.
It is.
When it's Adam, I think Adam Bach is his name. But I mean, it's the same actor. But no, that guy just happened to be Native American. That was part of that platoon.
Right.
You know, like, but I mean, I think it's funny because it's like, you know, I think people want to be kind of pat on the back for it now, and it's like, oh, there's a woman character. It's like, so what? Like, I mean, we grew up on those movies, like Princess Leia and, you know, Ripley and Sarah Connor. Like, those are not just movies. Those are some of the greatest movies ever made.
Right.
You know, it's like, it's so cool. Like, it's just so cool that, like, and I just, it's weird because I never thought of it like, oh my God, this is so, like, progressive. I just was like, this makes sense. It really works, and it's cool.
For whatever reason, I don't think it was ever heralded as any great fucking milestone achievement when it was happening, you know?
I mean, I think, like, it's funny because I think inherently within fantasy and, like, genre and, like, comic book and all this stuff, they always kind of went out of their way to, like, include, like, I mean, the most popular comic book for, like, 20 years was X-Men, and it was all about being a misfit, an outcast, even where, like, some of the characters were physically mutated in a grotesque way, like Nightcrawler or Beast. It's like, it wasn't all about, like, you know.
They were definitely like they were a persecuted minority, and
right.
It was a concept that was created in the 60s, you know.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you know, there were a lot of parallels without hitting you over the head of it to, like, you know, equal, you know,
what Gene Roddenberry did with Star Trek.
Right.
It's like, it's just like, I feel like genre has always been like a safe space for, like, everyone. It's kind of like, well, it's easy to have fun and enjoy it.
Put a black woman in a high position on Star Trek, as opposed to, like, it's more believable. Well, it's not even that it's more believable. It's that, like, at the end of the day, someone could wave their hand and say, "Oh, well, that's fake," as opposed to, like, if you put the same person at the same time and you said, "Oh no, she's the manager of the bank," everyone would be, like, annoyed at that. That could never happen, you know. But this thing's obviously fake. There's also no such thing as flying saucers and aliens, you know, and Vulcan and all this other stuff. So, like, it's I guess it's easier to slip that in there and kind of let that, like, sink into your subconscious, you know, insidiously, for the you know, the good of all, but and an insidious, like, kind of thing that slips into your brain of acceptance because you're looking past it, where you're not arguing it because it's like, oh, well, none of this exists, so I can dismiss it, you know. I don't have to get upset about her being on the command bridge and, you know, having this high position of responsibility and power within the fucking hierarchy of the show, you know.
Yeah. Well, even, like, you watch, like, the first Alien movie, it's, like, fascinating because it's like the traditional thing in horror movies is, like, kind of the like, it's always the tokenization of characters or actors. It's like the ones that are always die are, like, the black actor or the woman always die, you know, first. And, like, Alien ended, it's like, like all the white guys were dead, and it was down to the two women and Yaphet Kotto.
Yeah.
And it was like so. I think they like it's like, and again, it's like you never think of that because you're just watching a movie and enjoying it, and it's so well done. But it's like kind of like then you hear, well, this is the first time this person X has done this in this kind of movie. You're like, what are you talking about? You got to like study your film history. I mean, even like all the Star Wars stuff, like a lot of the actors on these Star Wars movies, it's like these new ones. It's like, have you watched Star Wars? They're like, oh, finally we have like a tough girl in this, and it's like, I don't know what Star Wars are you watching?
Right.
I mean, like Carrie Fisher was like she was just so tough and brave, and like she's like, get this walking carpet out of my way. She was fucking business, man.
We've talked about those Star Wars movies. The funny thing is that like there's supposed to be certain parallels, and then you get into the Abrams stuff, and they're like, oh, everyone's up in arms about a black stormtrooper, but they're up in arms about it for the wrong reasons. It's like the Empire and like you've said, and stormtroopers are supposed to be like the Nazis. They're supposed to have like that kind of attitude. You don't see they're like the rebellion is. I don't want to get like into politics, but if you look at Congress, if you look at the Senate, and you got the Republicans on one side, it's all white men,
right?
And on the Democrats is everyone in this homogenous fucking melting pot of every color of the rainbow and both sexes. And that's kind of what they're doing with the Empire and the Rebellion. The Rebellion has all the aliens and every shade of the rainbow and et cetera, et cetera. And in Empire, I mean, in the Empire, it's probably supposed to be more like Nazi, Aryan race kind of attitude,
Yeah,
and it's all humans.
Yeah,
there's no aliens,
I think like you look at the way
they subjugate the aliens.
Yeah. I think the way you look at the original is like he went very British and very white and all like kind of middle-aged or older men for the Empire, because it was supposed to be like Nazi Germany. It was supposed to be like the Hitler's SS. Like that's the kind of concept. So like when you watch it now and you're watching like The Mandalorian, and all of a sudden like you're like on a bridge and it's like it's like I mean, it's good for the actors, but it's not good for the allegory that they created, where like the Empire was supposed to be the Nazis,
right?
And now they're like, now the Empire is like hiring everyone,
right?
In the same, and it's like it's different when you go.
There's
forward
still plenty of roles.
time.
It's not like Star Trek can't be, every shade of the rainbow. It's just on one side.
Yeah. Well, also you can also it doesn't always have to be the Empire. You could go for you could go for different kinds of villains that do different kind of things. It gives you an opportunity to kind of like jump off. And I mean, like, I don't know, like it's weird because it's like, if you watch like dramas are really where they have like, there's like, it's harder to find like diversity. Like if you look at traditional dramas, like where like, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is like my favorite movie. It's pretty, undiverse. All of Woody Allen's films. Like you look at like a pastiche of like a lot of filmmakers, and they're not having a lot of diversity. To me, I always saw diversity happen in the movies I liked the most, which was like sci-fi genre, comic book stuff.
So jumping into that, I'm curious, when you make a movie called Leprechaun Back to the Hood, what kind of issues are you dealing with the studio, or because you're writing and directing it, there's less of like?
Well, it's interesting because like the original idea to do that movie was going to be Leprechaun Spring Break, and the way they wanted to do it, they wanted to do.
I still kind of want to see that.
I had a great pitch for it. They're like, this is what they told me. They go, these are the parameters of what we want. We want Leprechaun Spring Break. We want it to be. We're like thinking about shooting on a beach, like a beautiful beach somewhere. We have tax incentives all over the place, so we want to do like Leprechaun Spring Break. I'm like, that's a great idea. It's set in the water. So like, I just like, great. Here, I'm gonna give you the short version of the pitch. So the idea was the Leprechaun was like on a boat going back to Ireland. He finally got his goal. He's like all set. He's like, I'm finally returning to the motherland. Fuck this America place. I got my gold. I'm going home. I'm gonna have my gold, and I'm gonna be like chill. And then there's a storm, and the ship it's hit by lightning, and the ship is starting to sink, and the leprechaun is basically trying to swim after his gold, and what do you call it? A shark comes and eats him, and the gold just floats away, and then it kind of like lands in the sand, and we pan up in the sand, and we're on this like desert, beach resort with all these like 20-year-old college kids on spring break, like, Barbie and all that stuff. And then later on in the movie, you see the shark, and all of a sudden the shark like has this like, oh my God moment, and its stomach explodes, and the leprechaun swims out of it, and then he like comes up on shore like a week later to get his gold back. And it was going to be really fun because
were you going to do practical shark? Or
I have no idea, but they were like, I got hired off of that pitch.
Yeah.
And then we're like, cool. And so I wrote like a 70-page treatment, and like it was like a spoiled rich girl.
How much nudity was going to be in this thing?
I mean, they kind of wanted like that. So there was definitely, it was going to be like,
I feel like a horror movie that's set in spring break should be gratuitous.
Oh yeah, totally.
You know,
I mean, it was the main. It was like I always was going to do a girl as the lead, but it was going to be kind of like a rich girl come to this like kind of like island, and it's like the guy who works there is like the same age, but he's like broke, and he works there, and like the whole island like kind of exists around spring break, and like she basically goes into the water and like is starting to drown because she gets caught on the chest of gold, and then he has to come in and swim and save her, and then they have this like pot of gold, and like she doesn't even like say thank you, and then it's like there's this pot of gold, and there's this like very rich girl, very poor guy, and her friends, like they have to decide what to do with the gold, and then like the leprechaun hunts them down. But it was gonna be like fun, and then like so I do this like treatment, and, like great, and like actually can you change it to like Leprechaun Back to the Hood, because like the fifth one made a lot of money, so just do that, just do your idea, but just set it in the hood because we made a lot of money on the last one.
And there was no way to keep the shark.
Yeah, and I'm like, what do you mean? It's set on a beach resort, and the main girl's like a rich white girl, like she's like that type. She's like a mean girl, like, I'm like,
Privileged.
okay, so
yeah.
so I had to just kind of start from scratch, and they're like, it was just like that made money. It's like very like kind of so I was like, all right, so I just kind of like tried my best, I did what I could, but it was fun, it was like a fun, it was like, it's like there are worse ways to make like, I mean, like honestly, it's like it was my first movie.
Yeah.
And like Warwick Davis, so it's just we're sitting around talking about Star Wars all day, and George Lucas, and what it's like to work on Star Wars. And
Warwick Davis, for anyone he's the guy that's the leprechaun. He's a little person, and he was also R2D2. He's been
no, not R2D2.
Was he not? Oh, was he one of the?
No.
Was he one of the?
He was the main Ewok. He was Wicket.
Oh, he was okay. Right.
Yeah,
and he was Willow and Willow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And he was also
Kenny Baker was R2D2, right?
Yeah, right. Kenny. Warwick was a little kid when Raiders came out, Return of the Jedi came out, and they called him in because Kenny was supposed to play Wicket. Kenny Baker, who was an R2D2, and he got sick. So then they were like, Warwick's grandmother called in. And she's like, "Can my grandson come in and audition?" And they're like, "Oh, we're all stocked up on Ewoks." And she's like, but he's like under 3 feet tall, and they're like, "Oh my God, bring him in!" And they were just so excited that he could fit into the costume. So, like, it was like,
so
can you imagine?
He had stories for days, huh?
Yeah, I mean, he was 11 on that set. Can you imagine being 11 years old and being in a Star Wars movie? Like, how fucking cool is that? I mean, Jesus, that's like the best.
And not just like your henchmen too.
Yeah, like you're like legit in scenes with like Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher, and like, you're just like, and like I wanted. It's funny because on Leprechaun, what I wanted to do, which we never got to do, because like we literally were like had like 10 minutes to shoot the thing. I wanted to do a behind the scenes like video where as if the Leprechaun was like a real character. And he's just like in this movie, and he's like, and he talks about how he just wants to play other things besides leprechauns, even though he's a leprechaun.
Right.
And you're like, and like just like Warwick as a leprechaun pretending like he's a real leprechaun.
Yeah, as if like the leprechaun's playing himself in the movie. Yeah.
Exactly. But and then like I'm bummed that they stopped the series because I was like, I always thought they should do one more where Warwick plays the evil leprechaun and also plays a good leprechaun that has to fight him, and they could do that like fun thing.
Well,
but
so I know the WWE did.
he's also in what do you call it in Harry Potter. He plays like 5 parts in Harry Potter.
Yeah, there's lots of spots for little people in Harry Potter.
Yeah.
But for the Leprechaun franchise, I know the WWE when they were making movies made a Leprechaun movie with the
with Hornswoggle, right?
Yeah. But does that mean that they had bought the rights, or was that a
I don't know. I think they went in as a co-financier with Lionsgate.
Yeah.
Because it was still a Lionsgate movie, but I never saw that one.
Does
so
Lionsgate still own the rights to
Oh
Leprechaun?
yeah, because that was one of their acquisitions from Trimark. They bought Trimark and the Leprechaun because the first Leprechaun made a shocking amount of money. It just came the year it came out, like Jennifer Aniston's in the original one, and it kind of came out and there was like nothing in the theaters, so it made like an absorbent amount of money.
It was like a unique. I feel like that was the time period where those types of movies could kind of strike it because it was like when did that was like a late 80s movie, right?
No, I want to say it was 91, but I could be wrong. I could be off.
But I'm saying
something like that.
That was still in that time period where you were still shooting a lot on film, and I feel like with the DVD sales and video sales and rentals back in the time, that if you came in under a certain amount of money on your budget, you were guaranteed to make money because you knew you were selling X amount to all these retail places, and then whatever you made in the theater might be your profit.
Yeah.
It was kind of like the way some of these things kind of worked out sometimes.
Yeah. Well, this is also kind of like dipshit mentality where you're like these people pretend like they know what's going to make money in the theater.
Right.
Because the thing is when sometimes when you don't put things in theaters and you don't even give them a chance, you don't know what's going to be successful. Like nobody knew Terminator was going to be like this monster hit,
But like Terminator, Leprechaun was a unique onto its own the first time around.
Yeah.
So you see an ad for that, and everyone's like, I gotta go see that. Like I've never seen anything like that. I gotta go see that.
I remember when I was like a little kid, I saw RoboCop, and I was like, "Oh, that's gonna be stupid." RoboCop. No one even put any time into that. The what do you call it? The title. And then you watch the movie, and it's awesome. The movie's like incredible.
Right.
And like it's kind of like movies
and if you
had like a
that
fighting
movie
chance back then.
If you call that movie anything else, would it have been as big of a hit and memorable to this day? Probably not.
I don't know. RoboCop's pretty.
I think I think it's,
that feels like a Poochie name.
But I think like over the course of time, I think it's like it's so iconic. I don't know that if you had called it something more creative and flowery, that
it just kind of has a feeling where you're like a bunch of people are in a room and they're like, it's a movie about a robot cop. What should we call it? I don't know, RoboCop. It doesn't feel
because you had a Dutch guy putting it together. He's like,
he didn't write it.
I saw an interview with someone talking about Verhoeven. It was Neil Patrick Harris was talking about doing the bug movie with
Starship Trooper,
and he was like, "Wouldn't it be funnier if I said it this way?" And he's like, Verhoeven would be like, "Say it whatever way you think's the funniest. I don't understand American humor."
Mandy's dad is in RoboCop.
Is he?
Yeah.
Where?
He's man in bathroom. You know that scene when Bob is talking shit about Dick Jones,
and then Dick comes out of the stall.
Yeah,
and the other guy runs because he peed his pants.
Yeah. Well, there's like 4 guys run out. Like everyone clears out of the bathroom.
Right, but the guy that Miguel Ferrer was talking to. Manuel.
Yeah,
Miguel
he
peed his pants rushing to get out of there.
Mandy's dad did not pee his pants.
Right. No, I wasn't accusing her dad of being the one that peed his pants.
We have to clarify this,
right. Next time I watch it, because it's still on like cable all the time.
You'll see he's prominently featured, and it's really funny because
how I know which one's him.
He's the only Asian guy. Diversity.
I set you up for that one.
Yeah. But it's funny. Her uncle made an action figure of him, and it's like RoboCop, man in bathroom. And he did the still from the movie. It's
He
really
put
funny.
it on a blister card and everything.
Yeah.
That's funny. So when you were, I know, I don't know if you want to tell the story. Didn't you have like a little bit of a power play with your star like early on in the movie there?
With Warwick?
Yeah.
No, Warwick was really sweet, but I think look, I mean, we got along smashingly, but I think you come into these movies and you're doing Leprechaun 6, and you're like, oh, this is gonna be a shit show. Like,
Was
I
that
think,
the sixth one?
that was the sixth one, and I think Warwick was just kind of like, kind of as anyone should be. I think he was kind of apprehensive. He's like, what the hell am I getting myself into?
Well, also directors come and go, but I'm the Leprechaun.
Exactly. Like each one had a different director. So it's kind of like it's his franchise and we're kind of borrowing it.
Right.
But, I mean, we got along awesome. But I mean, I think he was, understandably suspicious at first. But I mean, I was trying, like, I was trying to make the best movie I could make. And there were just, there was a lot of things that were just like, we shot the movie in 3 weeks. And it's like, there's like 10 action sequences in it. It's they'll spend 3 weeks shooting one action sequence, and we did like a dozen of them. It was like crazy. It was like really, really chaotic. And I think he was skeptical too because in Leprechaun 5 he kind of did a lot of telekinesis where it was like you wave your hand and the person freezes, and then you and this one we have him like loading him up with squibs and shooting him and blowing him up and setting him on fire and having a car smash into him and then smush him.
Right,
so
he's not 11 anymore at that point. So
yeah. So, but like I would say the first couple of days were a little bumpy, but then he knew we were like like everything was storyboarded. We were working really hard, and then he was like totally on board. He was like so awesome to work with. He was like just so great. Like, and he's just such a like that's a tough thing to do, is to like put all that crap on, and then have to like be thrown around and shot at, and like that's a lot of makeup, a lot of gear. That's that hat and it's a lot of, and like we redid the costume for the movie, so yeah, it's
but even so, I doubt like the budget was like these Marvel ones where you could install like air conditioners into the suit.
Oh yeah, no, definitely not. I mean, it's tough because a lot of the stuff in the film industry, it's like I mean, you're working on movies, and it's like. And, like when I was at Lionsgate, they were working on other movies, and they're like, it was funny because we were working the editing suite. And so it's like, we're doing Leprechaun, and the next suite over, they're doing a movie with Dustin Hoffman in the next editing suite, a Lionsgate movie. And then they were like, I guess Dustin Hoffman was coming in one day to like watch a cut of the movie. And they had to like tear off all the signs that said Leprechaun. I'm like, what the hell's going on? They're like, we don't want him to know we're doing a Leprechaun movie. And I'm like, fuck off. I'm like, fuck that guy. I'm like, what? Like, you don't think Dustin Hoffman's done a ton of dog shit in his fucking career? Not everything he did was Rain Man, like.
Plus, studios make all kinds of movies. It's like, it's.
Like right now, the most profitable studio outside of Marvel is Blumhouse.
Right.
They do horror movies. They make a ton of money. They keep the budget low. Everyone loves their movies. Like no real artist is going to be like, oh, you're doing a horror movie and like faint or whatever.
Yeah, they're ashamed of the movie that's probably going to pay for 3 other movies that flop. It's it's like New Line. When they're like the house that Freddy built. And it's like, and then years later, you don't want to admit that you make Freddy Krueger movies.
Exactly. It's like,
no, we're in the Lord of the Rings business now. It's like, fuck off.
Yeah, it's these people, like, it's like if everyone knew what was going to make money, then every movie would make money. If every project was like equal, I mean, and I said to them, I said, it's crazy that like. And I remember I said to one of the people, I'm like, it's crazy. Like, you won't let me do any reshoots. You won't let me do any of the things I kind of want to do. You curtail me so much, but you put so much resources into this one. And they're like, well, this one has Dustin Hoffman. And I'm like, you don't know if it's going to make money. You don't know which movie's going to make money. Every movie should have a fighting chance.
Do you happen, since this is a Spitecast, do you happen to remember what Dustin Hoffman movie that was and whether it?
Yeah, it was called Confidence, which totally tanked.
Right. So there you go. You're right.
It's like it and like it was just like no, like I always think it's funny about our industry is they're like it's kind of like the draft, like for those people who watch like football. Like every year the team comes out, especially after they have a bad season, and they go, yeah, we really need to bolster our offensive line and like get everything together and like make sure like our quarterback's protected and like we want to really build the team around the offensive line. And then the draft comes around and they fucking grab a wide receiver. It's like, but I thought you have to bolster the line. But as soon as you're on draft day and that like big fancy skill set player is there, they all lose their mind.
But also the draft is a good analogy because you have picks 1 through 7, and like pick 1 and 2 is like your Hoffman movie, and pick 6 or 7 is your movie.
Right.
But maybe pick 6 makes the team and ends up starting for 15 years, and your first round draft pick busts out and never plays it down, or gets hurt and never plays it down.
But if it was just about putting a movie star, in a movie, like for example, like one of like the best examples ever is like Johnny Depp did Pirates of the Caribbean, and it made $1 billion, and then the next, and which is it's actually kind of poignant now. And that same year, or like within a year, he came out with Rum Diary, and it made $9 million. And it's like, well, how can one actor do 2 movies in the same year, and one makes $1 billion and one makes $9 million? There's a $991 million disparity between these 2 movies.
Now, for Johnny, he's still averaging $500 million a movie. But
right,
which is still pretty successful,
right? But the point is, the audience doesn't come along for every ride,
right?
Like the audience doesn't just like
they're not there for the actor.
Yeah,
it's the whole thing. It's the whole package.
Yeah, I mean, look,
the actor helps. It gets your ears to perk up, to at least then see what it's about,
right? But like Tom Holland is in Spider-Man, and Uncharted comes out a few months later, and it makes 1/7 the business.
Right.
And Tom Holland's an awesome actor, but it's not like because he's in this, all that Spider-Man money is going to translate into Uncharted, even though it's the same year. It doesn't work that. And Uncharted was still successful, but I mean, you think like, oh my God, this guy's a bona fide movie star. Everyone's going to just funnel into this, and it's not really always the case.
Well, it's the precarious nature of like we've talked before about like the way DC and Marvel cast their movies, and where like DC has just the list of the 20 hottest people in the business, and they just work their way down it till someone says yes.
Yeah.
Where Marvel goes through a whole process to find the right person for the role.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily, like when you look at Thor, they cast 2 fucking nobodies to play the leads. It's Hemsworth and what's the other guy, Loki.
Hiddleston.
It's like, who the fuck? Before that movie came out, you'd say either of those names to me. I'm like, you may as well be talking fucking an alien language to me. I don't know what the fuck you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, and like another studio would like hire like whoever was hot that year and stick him in as Thor, and you'd be like, oh well, this guy's only like 5'10" and like 135 pounds, and like, oh, he can, we'll put a muscle suit on him or he'll work out, and it's like, yeah, but he's still not going to look like that guy's like if you cast, like as an example, who's a wonderful actor, if you cast Edward Norton, who's a phenomenal actor, as Thor, it doesn't matter how good he is. He's just never going to be Thor. It's an archetype. It's archetypical.
Right.
And like Marvel was like, even Chris Evans. Like Chris Evans was like doing stuff, but not like he wasn't like flourishing. He wasn't working.
His name didn't put it's a term in wrestling. Didn't put asses in seats.
Right.
You don't just go Chris Evans and everyone flock. Now they do.
Yeah.
Now their ears perk up. Like I said, they perk up. You got to still sell people, but
I mean,
but before Captain America, people's ears didn't necessarily even know, unless you're really a movie fan, who Chris Evans was.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what Marvel's I mean, I think their real success is that they took these actors and they're like, who's perfect for this part? I mean, which is funny because it's kind of copying the first Superman movie from the Richard Donner Superman movie, which was like, we don't need a star to play Superman. We can put stars around him, but Superman, we need to find somebody that should play Superman. Yeah. And it's like 6'4" Christopher Reeve, like phenomenal.
Right.
You know,
then you have Hackman and Brando in it.
Yeah.
And you're good, you know?
Yeah. Hackman, Brando, Beatty, Glenn Ford. I mean, you surrounded him with just astronomically. But I mean, again, it's like, you know, you also look at Christopher Reeve and you're like, the guy went to Juilliard. The guy's like 6'4". The guy's really handsome. The guy, like,
right. He just had never done anything in movies. That meant anything. Yeah.
I mean, and it's funny because you hear about like the rumors of who they were talking about casting, and they were
Clint
like
Eastwood, shit like
that.
that.
And Burt Reynolds.
Right.
It's like, can you imagine those guys in this Superman outfit?
I can't imagine either of them because Clint Eastwood doesn't play anything but Clint.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like whether it's Bridges of Madison County or it's Good, the Bad, and the Ugly or it's Any Which Way But Loose, it's still basically Clint fucking Eastwood. And Burt Reynolds is kind of the same way.
Yeah.
Like the first time Superman does a Burt Reynolds laugh, I'm like out of the movie. Like you've taken me out. I'm already I'm already running from Smokey. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, and maybe even like Burt Reynolds in like 1970 could have played Superman, you know, but not in 1978 when the movie
Longest
came out.
Yard time.
Yeah, like when he was like maybe there, but they really picked, and I think Marvel was like fearless. They're like, people are going to come to see the movie. They're not going to come to see, like, they don't care if it's like Matt Damon playing Captain America. They were like, you know, like, and I think like who like, you know, like you look at Chris Evans and he's so spectacular as Captain America. You know, so I can't like, how would you ever recast Thor and Captain America now? Because they're so intrinsically tied to these characters, these actors, and they're so perfect.
I remember the griping about Chris Evans wasn't so much that he you needed a star. It was that he's done like 10 comic book movies already.
Right.
And
he's already Johnny Storm.
And he already played a Marvel superhero, but technically it's not a Marvel, you know.
Yeah.
It's that fucking fine line shit. But
Fox,
nobody gave a shit.
Yeah.
You know, because you know he did the Losers. He did fucking two Fantastic Fours. He did Scott Pilgrim. I'm probably there was one, wasn't he Push or something? Wasn't he in?
Yeah,
I mean,
Push.
those were all comic book / superhero movies. You know.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny in the Losers he played the computer hacker.
Right. that was a fun movie. I'm not saying it was a great movie, but it had like that was a loaded cast just before its time.
Zoe Saldana, oh my god. Yeah, I mean Idris Elba, the cast is fantastic.
What's his name? The main guy, God, I forget his
name. Richard Dean or something like that.
Yeah. The guy from
Walking Dead. Yeah, and Grey's Anatomy.
And Supernatural.
Yeah. I mean I think he's really the guy from Grey's Anatomy. I think that's his biggest role.
Probably, but I never seen Grey's
Anatomy. No, I'm joking. He was like on like 2 episodes. Like, like he's like this. He's the headliner on Walking Dead. No, I think it's Richard Dean. But yeah, I mean, it had a great cast. It was like the cast was spectacular.
It's Dean something. Richard Dean is MacGyver, isn't he?
I don't know. Dean Morgan.
Yeah, there you go.
Captain Morgan. something with Dean in it somewhere. Yeah, but
yeah, he I guess he went on to a good career, but he was in those first 2 seasons of Supernatural. He played.
And he was in Watchmen too.
Yeah, he was the comedian.
Yeah. But I mean, you know, it's that kind of fearless casting. It's like, you know, it's like you go out on a limb and you know you really. I mean, because you know you look at like how comic book movies really got turned into a shorthand. Like after they made that first Tim Burton Batman, it was like grab a star, stuff him in it. You know, who cares if he's right for it? Write the script fast, shoot it cheap, and just, you know, you rake in the money. You know, like it's really like, it was really like a dark time for comic book movies.
Jeffrey
and like
Dean Morgan.
Isn't that what I said?
You said Dean Morgan.
I don't know.
Or Morgan Dean, like Jimmy Dean.
We'll have to play it back and see. Yeah. I'm pretty sure I said that.
There's no playbacks on this thing.
But yeah, but I mean, it's Marvel's really, I mean, it's fun because it's like you think back when we were like kids and you're reading comic books, and to see them come to life on that level is just extraordinary,
Yeah.
really extraordinary. I mean, like all the like Endgame and Infinity War and like, oh my God, just like, it's really like like I have friends in the business that are like, oh, I don't like those Marvel movies. Oh, fuck off. Like it's just, like you just like literally have to sit there and like, like the total haterade thing where they're like nobody goes see movies because of superhero movies. It's like, oh yeah, because like people are totally cross shopping the new fucking Jane Austen movie and fucking Iron Man. Like that's like you like oh, I can't go see like Little Women because I just watched Infinity War.
Right.
Like as if, like,
But if people would rather see that, that's not the
Yeah.
fault of Marvel.
But those like 16-year-old boys that are watching Marvel movies aren't going to go watch Little Women.
Never. Dude, you're not losing $1 to them.
Yeah. I mean, that's not how the business works. Like, you look at,
Well, but you always want to have someone to blame. It's never.
Well, yeah.
It's never, it's always someone else's fault. So
I was sitting down with some friends and we were talking, the producers, and I like talking, and we're just, we're talking about movies, and I'm like, without being shitty, but I'm like, like if you take like a movie like I gave them the example of Spider-Man No Way Home, right? That's the last one, right? No Way Home.
yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So the one with, I'm like, for everyone who watched that movie, that's like arguably like people came out of that movie crying, and that was like everyone's favorite Spider-Man movie. Like arguably people would walk out of that and be like, that's the best Spider-Man movie I've ever seen. Now conversely, all these like dramas that didn't make money this year that are like nominated for Academy Awards, I'm like, did anyone come out of like House of Gucci, for example, and say, oh my God, that's my new favorite drama. I love it more than The Godfather and Citizen Kane and Lawrence of Arabia. Like nobody came out of that saying that. Even if you love the movie or like it, you wouldn't come out of House of Gucci and say, this is my new favorite drama of all time.
Drama or biography, or
or whatever category it's in. You would never say this was better than Bohemian Rhapsody, for example. You would never, like, you know what I mean? There's like, if you want your movie to compete, it has to be like, you can't ask the audience to pretend like they haven't seen other similar movies that were better.
Right.
It doesn't work that way. We don't work backwards like that. Like I said, people come out of Spider-Man. The reason Spider-Man made $800 million is because everyone loved it. Like people went to it.
Do you think Marvel has that there is a something to be said for the creating this huge continuing fan base where like you could see most of these movies if you've never seen any of them. You could just pick one and watch it, and for the most part, like this last wave, you'd be a little more lost. But before this last wave, they were kind of saying like almost any movie you could watch on its own and not be confused. But part of what Spider-Man, the No Way Home wanted, is that if you did watch all the other movies, including the ones that Fox Studios made, or Sony, Sony made, that there's like these extra rewards for you. And it's almost like these Marvel movies are good on their own, but it's like you get like punch cards for free subs if you keep watching the movies. That it's even more rewarding on a second layer because you've been investing 15 years or 12 years into these things now. And you're so steeped in this mythology that you're getting something extra. And so, like, of course I'm going to keep going to Marvel movies because on top of the fact that it's a fun ride for 2 hours, I can switch my brain off. It's great fucking action and CGI and humor and whatever. But there's this other thing. I'm constantly getting, like, reward miles. Or cashing in reward miles because there's this extra layer to them. And, you can't get that from these, even with the James Bond movies. They keep resetting it. So there's not like, oh, this guy's been on this ride since the 60s, and like we could do callbacks to fucking Goldfinger or something. That doesn't work.
even like what was successful in the Bond movies is like how Q was the same and M was the same. Like they kind of carried through, like in the early ones,
As
but,
much
you know,
as
I mean,
possible, you know.
yeah, but I mean, what like people don't understand about comic book movies. Comic book movies are wholly unique, not the movies themselves. Let me start from scratch. Like, for example, if you went in and bought like all of Jane Austen's novels, right? They're all written by Jane Austen. If you go in and buy all of Stephen King's books, they're all written by Stephen King.
Yes.
Like there isn't like another author writing a version of it. There isn't another author writing a version of The Shining. You know, Marvel, like comic books are wholly unique in
Spider-Man's had hundreds of writers
exactly
over the course of like decades and different,
I mean, you're
different titles and whatever else.
Yeah. Like Marvel, you're talking about Spider-Man, you're talking about 60 years of stories with hundreds of authors. And when I say authors, I mean
authors and
writers,
artists, different looks.
Artists.
Yeah.
You know, Todd McFarlane and Steve Ditko. X-Men.
There's been a take on Spider-Man for anyone.
Yeah, and then you look at something like Chris Claremont, what he did with the X-Men, and you're like, these are engineered to be serialized because you like it's always like funny because I always said was when Star Wars was acquired by Disney, I said this isn't like Marvel because like the smart thing that the people that was done with Marvel with Disney with MCU was that they were like, hey, instead of just abandoning wholesale these decades of talented artisans that did stuff, let's make that the basis of everything, and that's why they're able to do it. They have a map. They have like a road map. And I'm like, with Star Wars, I'm like, what's your road map? You don't have a road map because Star Wars was the creation of, it's like Stephen King. It was the creation of one person.
Yeah, it's one voice.
Who
even if he hired a writer, he was standing over them as they wrote, you know.
And he didn't make like 80 years of comic books or 70 years. Like there were like novels and comic books, but those weren't really George Lucas's vision. It was kind of like,
Lucas never filled out the universe. He was always this one family kind of story, and everything else in Star Wars was I kind of conceptualized by other people.
Yeah. So every time you do a Star Wars movie,
either the novels or the comics or like Filoni sort of with the fucking cartoons, but that's still kind of like an off branch of Lucas anyways. He's the biggest Lucas disciple you'll ever find anyway.
Yeah. But you're basically starting from scratch. So you run into a very real problem with you're only as good as the people that are in the room, because it's not like there's a bunch of George Lucases hanging off of a tree somewhere. Right. So like Marvel's wholly unique that they can, I mean, like for example, Harry
Marvel
Potter movies
and DC theoretically.
Well, theoretically, if they had,
I'm saying they're the two situations. They are the
situationally, I would say comic books, Marvel and DC have the unique situation where they can cull on, like DC more than Marvel. They can cull on 80 years of material.
Well, no, Marvel. A lot of those characters were around since the 30s. Captain America, Submariner, Human Torch. They had a lot of characters that were around during the war.
Real thing, real like
60s.
It's the 60s stuff.
But
it's Spider-Man,
the DC stuff. But the DC stuff, to be honest, most of it's 60s also. The Golden Age characters, even the Superman and the Batman, really, they don't go that far back to reference.
But Wonder Woman goes back far.
Well, but I'm saying, but those stories they don't reference to.
Right. But the fact is that they've just been around for, like, if you took the Harry Potter movies and you spent 3 years between the movies, you'd ruin them. Like, the Harry Potter movies had to be made fast while the kids were still believable in the parts. So why wouldn't, like, if you buy the Harry Potter 8 books or however many books there were, of course you're going to make all of them. So when you buy Marvel, like, the problem is you buy Marvel and then you go, well, forget about what was written. What should we make it about? That's where you run into problems. What MCU has done is brilliant. Like, they've been like, I mean, they've taken really
which of the already successful versions of these characters can we draw from?
Right. And also what's interesting is
they're literally taking from the John Byrne run of the comic in like the mid to late 80s, I think it was, where it was literally like a fun romp. She was a lawyer, she was a superhero, and she broke the fourth wall before Deadpool ever even thought about it.
Yeah.
And looked at the fucking viewer and spoke to them.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, like this is, like I think what they did with that Ant-Man movie was like brilliant. Like the first Ant-Man movie is so good, so well done. Like, how do you make a fucking movie about Ant-Man? That's insane. Like, it's Ant-Man. And it's like one of my favorite Marvel movies. It's just so well done. Because it's like, they're like, here's the character, and like, I don't know, like there's something like special there. Some real like they're adults, but they're also kids in a sandbox, and they really know how to deliver. And, and it's, the industry should be taking notes and understanding this of like how certain stories need to work as serialized, because that's what you're buying into, and certain stories need to be, one movie and that's it. But like, if you are making just one movie, you're like, are you making the best version of this story possible?
Right.
Like, I mean, like
the arrogance is when someone comes along and wants to do a comic book movie, and they're like, they just don't want to have anything to do with what's come before, because obviously they know better than 80 years of success with a character like Batman or Superman. It's like, oh, I know better. I'll just change everything and make it mine. And it's like, well, but then it's not going to be any good.
I mean, I always made
you don't know better
that,
than the 80 years of proven success, the 80-year track record.
I remember I always made a joke. I'm like, this industry is so arrogant that they would like, if they would like change the Bible if they could, and then that horrible Noah movie came out with Russell Crowe, and it was like Lord of the Rings and rock monsters, and like, what the fuck is going on? This is like, I'm like, this is a biblical story. What the hell are you doing? It was so insane. I'm like, wait, are you a better writer than the Bible? And I'm like, I'm not like a religious.
Like, people have been reading that fucking book for 2,000 years, but better. You're gonna come up with something better, right?
Yeah, it's like, oh wait till you see my thing. No, yeah. You know how he built the ark? Yeah, but didn't he just like follow God's instructions? Yeah, but he had rock monsters that helped him. It's like, what? What the? Wait, say that again. It's like, I mean, it's just like.
This is where someone didn't have enough oversight when making a movie,
Like, rock monsters? Like, what are you talking about? Like, that's when you need to, like, my goodness. I mean, what the hell are you talking about? But, I mean, I think people want to see the thing they're paying to see. It's not rocket science.
Right. No, exactly. You overthink it, and then you sink it.
Yeah. Who do you think is gonna take over DC?
I don't know, but I did hear that one name in the fucking list.
What's that?
Was Greg Berlanti.
Oh God! Here, I didn't really care about your answer. I just want to tell you what I thought. Here's my pitch for who should take over DC. There's two groups that should be considered to take over DC to like make it what it could be. They should look at Vince Gilligan, because I think like what he did with Saul proves he's like the greatest person in television, because Breaking Bad is, I think, the best show ever. And then doing Saul is like, that'll never work. And you're going to the well one too many times, and you can't tell a story in this universe with the fucking lawyer as a prequel. No one's going to want to see that. You're just going to like, ruin the whole thing, and it ends up being, pretty much as good as Breaking Bad. So he would be like a person I think that could handle multiple crossover stories with just real, like, I mean, those shows are just incredible. So I think he could handle the breadth of like characters spanning multiple storylines and story arcs.
I just don't
really
know.
Well.
I want to exclude anyone that isn't like someone that grew up and continues to immerse themselves in comic books and
he
the
wrote
mythology.
X-Files. He wrote X-Files.
Did he?
I mean, he's a genre guy. Yeah,
I understand
That's how
genre, but again, even X-Files is the kind of thing where like you're creating your own thing out of nothing. You're every week you're spinning your own. It's almost like the Sandman, where whatever story you want to tell, you can tell from week to week. You just have to include these two characters in it. Where like doing the understanding and understanding the history of these characters and comics that have come before. I don't know if that, like, Feige is such a unique individual because not only did he understand all this stuff and like was raised in and whatever, but then all of his years in the business before he became a producer was working on these movies under other producers.
No, well, there's never gonna be another Feige.
He's such a unique
impossible
because he had like 10, 15 years of training in how to make Marvel movies before he was allowed to make Marvel movies.
Yeah, and then my other group that I would pitch would be the Duffer Brothers with Sean Levy. The three of them taking over DC. Yeah, because I think Stranger Things season 4 was just extraordinary. It was just like so fun, so like exciting.
I don't hate that pick. I just don't know if they're again, I don't know if they seem like the type of people, I don't know if they'd be interested in like investing 15, 20 years of their life to like overseeing that, being the architects of the entire thing, and not want to like at some point be like, oh, I want to fuck off and do my own shit again,
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is like people keep like every few years they're like, we're gonna get another Kevin Feige, and it's like, what do you mean? You say that as if it's like something to go to the store and buy, like. Kevin Feige is the most successful film producer of all time.
Here's the exactly. With the highest batting percentage, probably.
Yeah, it's like saying like, oh, we should get a Michael Jordan in this year's draft.
Right.
Like, just where's the Michael Jordan?
They've been saying that for 30 years, and they're still
it's like, get me the who's Tom Brady this year?
Right.
Right. Oh, where's the Belichick? Is there a Belichick we can hire?
But then here's my weak argument for Berlanti.
Oh God.
No, overhear me. At least he oversaw like a universe of comic characters on the CW. But then he also understood what the CW was and made them for the CW. When he made Doom Patrol for HBO Max, it was an entirely different type of show. It is if you've never seen Doom Patrol, I highly recommend it.
Okay, I'll check it out.
It is fantastic. It is not anything like a CW show. It is perfect for HBO Max. So if now you're saying, well, make us a movie universe, I think he understands he's not going to make CW movies because he's already shown he could take a DC property and make it CW for CW. You can make it HBO Max for HBO Max. So why can't he make it cinema for the cinema?
Yeah.
That's my argument for him. And whether you like the stuff or not, you can't argue the success of the popularity of it. That's all, That's.
I reject your hypothesis, but I respect it.
All right. Maybe after you see like an episode or two of Doom Patrol, you'd be like, I understand what he's saying at least. That like I can't judge Berlanti based on just what he's done.
Yeah,
with Arrow and fucking Flash.
I'm just mad because Mandy auditioned for Green Arrow and didn't get it.
Well, what did she audition for?
It was just a small part, but I think her audition was great.
Yeah, but I haven't seen any Asians in any of his stuff.
Well, that's because they're usually playing ninjas, and that's the whole point.
Right, they got masks on. They don't even need to be. Technically, they're probably Caucasian under that mask. I think I saw an African American ninja and got confused.
Jesus.
Yeah. So
good times.
Yeah. So we used to destroy the fucking dorm pretty bad.
Oh yeah.
We were so rowdy and reckless in those dorms that some of the fucking like more serious students used to get the ones on the third floor. Remember? They used to get so mad at us.
Oh yeah,
because they're like, well, we're like I'm trying to earn my master's and I got to sleep and blah blah blah, and we're like sophomores and juniors.
Oh yeah,
and we're like, what do you want? We're in college. We're in the dorms. If you need, if if you're gonna live in the dorms, you got to expect ruckus. If you don't want ruckus, go fucking rent off campus. Like what?
And
what can we tell you?
There was a girl that was living above us who was like almost like 30, and we were like 20, and we were like, we're fucking just like, we just got out of the cusp of being teenagers, and like I said, it's like it wasn't like I've been to so many campuses and universities, and it's so hard to describe RISD for what it was, but it's just like imagine 1,800 or 1,500 kids that are all like the best artists in their high school, and they all get to this one place where you're like expected to work. Like you can work as hard or as little as you want, but you were expected to like not sleep and work and pump out material all the time and be like go to class for 6-hour 8-hour studio classes, and you'd sit there and draw and paint, and the teachers would just yell and scream at you to get better, and like it was a real intensive.
In all fairness, I never got yelled and screamed at, but
but you kind of gave off that school shooter vibe.
Before there were school shooters, there was
you were a trendsetter.
But in terms of yell and scream, I think you're saying more like the thing that Guy cried about that you were talking about.
Yeah,
where it's like, listen, you pin your shit on the wall. We all sit there and we all talk about it, and we everyone, but the teacher mostly, because they lead the critique.
Yeah.
And I think students also early on aren't comfortable. By the end of a semester, you're ready to like fucking shoot the truth. But
you also weren't in the film program. The film program was fucking brutal because everyone got so competitive there, and they were so shitty with their movies, man.
A critique is supposed to point out the flaws. Like, if you put something up to the wall and everyone just tells you what they like about it, it doesn't help you one bit.
Nope.
In terms of learning for the next time you put pencil to paper. But if you say your proportions are wrong, or your eyes are looking in two different directions, or the shading looks a little off here, what did you change lighting in the middle of this thing, et cetera, those are things that next time when you do the drawing, you will be better.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
That was the purpose of it, was like, tell me what I did wrong. Tell me what you don't like. And then next time I'll have better work.
Yeah, I mean, which fucking trips me out about our industry, because everyone thinks like everyone thinks their work is so fucking good, and no one will take a ounce of criticism. And then they're like,
that's George Lucas showing that first prequel movie to all of his buddies, and they're all like, that's great, George. I don't know what you want. Like I think the movie was so finished at that point that even if they told him what they needed to fix, he wasn't going to fix it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, what do you do at that point? You've committed $100 million to shooting it. It's kind of like it's showing somebody your sketch versus showing them your like painting on the gallery wall with a frame on it. What are you going to do at that point? It's done. You varnished it. You like literally can't even add or delete paint. That's the
problem, because like I know, like when I would be in my room drawing or painting for like 12 hours, like let alone you're working at it from like 6 to 12 inches away.
Yeah, and
so you can't see the obvious problems.
Right.
You could walk out of the room for an hour, walk back in with fresh eyes, and maybe catch it. Or somebody walks by your room while the door's open and says hi for a second, and they spot it immediately because they haven't been staring at it from 3 inches away. Yep. And George Lucas stared at those fucking Star Wars movies from 3 inches away, never even walked away from them to get and wash water over his eyes to get a fresh look, let alone ask someone else for fucking their opinion,
Yep. I mean, going back to Rizzy, what always pissed me off about watching you work?
What's that?
As I always hated when I would come in and you would be painting in your bed. It would just make me so angry.
In my bed?
Because you'd be like so relaxed, and your painting would be so good. But I'm like, fuck this guy. I'm like, get out of your bed. Like you should
Wait,
be suffering.
I don't remember working in my bed.
You do drugs, like fucking like relaxing, like you're fucking lounging, doing a crossword puzzle.
Oh yeah,
like,
and I remember you would be in the fucking bathroom at the end of the hall, scrunched on the floor in some weird position.
Yeah, I'm like, you should be standing up, or like it bothered me that you looked so at ease and the work was so good. It pissed me off.
I was a lazy fat fuck. I just made it work.
But your work was good. That's
Thank
what,
you.
like if you were relaxed and it sucked, it'd be like, yeah, fuck that guy. But it was like, fuck, man, the painting's actually good. Fuck this guy.
I've talked about it before, but like on some of the other podcasts, I've told stories about this. But my room that I shared 1 year with Chris and 1 year with Dave, that was like the epic room for that fucking.
Oh yeah,
because we were on the first floor,
and then the terrace.
But because we were on a hill, when you walk in on the first floor, you go to my room, but out the back we were the only one with like a terrace balcony or whatever. It was literally a 1-story drop because of the way it was situated on the hill. And so I would leave those doors unlocked, and if I wasn't home, if people wanted to go and chill, there was like a little, I don't know, like a stone park bench like there, and you could go and jump from that, grab the balcony and climb up into the place. And so I would come home, like half the days I would come home from class and someone was hanging out in my room, listening to music or watching fucking movies. And we always had had the booze and the cigars and the nudie mags in there. It was like the man hangout. Yeah.
It was like the one room Animal House.
It was.
I remember, do you remember that time? Like, cause it was like, I think it was like evening, and I jumped up on the balcony and you were in the room, and I just stood by the doors because they were like those glass.
You were
French
just staring
doors.
at me from the doors. And then I think I finally saw you and I jumped out of my skin.
Yeah, and then you wouldn't unlock the doors. And I had to climb back down.
There were so many fun times. Well, that was the room that like, I don't know if you want to end with the story or not. That was the room that had all the porno mags in it that ended up having the confrontation between me and Heather Henson.
Oh yeah, yeah. She was not a fan of that.
What? Tell your side of it, because I want to. Well, and then I'll like jump in where I remember stuff.
They were. You had like a stack of Playboys, and
right.
This was pre. It was like everyone. Every guy, as most guys do, enjoyed the stack of literature.
Right, we had we literally dragged a couch in there. It was like a hangout room.
Yeah. I mean, everyone would come by and hang out, and it would be fun, and it really bothered Heather. So like,
this is Heather Henson, one of the children of Jim Henson.
Yeah. So
for some context here.
So she took all of the magazines and she threw them out.
She didn't throw them out.
She walked around the block.
No, she walked out the front door and tossed them in the middle of the road.
Yeah.
They were just scattered across the fucking road there.
And it was like with great effort, she like really like kind of grabbed a stack of them and she kind of made a stand, and she's like, fuck you and fuck your misogyny, and she took all the magazines and she threw them out. And then I think
she was a good sport because she loved us. She was one of our good friends.
Yeah, she was awesome.
But we were literally the fucking the knuckle draggers of the fucking whole school. Absolutely the knuckle draggers.
And then she was in there, and I think I don't know if it was the same night or was
it was that night, because I was made. It was that night. I made her. I wasn't going to go pick him up. I was like, go get him. I was go get him.
And she had a copy of Utne Reader, which to this day I still don't know what that is.
It's like it's got to be some like fancy art book, like a like a fancy art magazine kind of.
Yeah. And she left her magazine. So it was one magazine. And you're like, if you don't go get my stack of Playboys, I'm going to tear out this magazine page for page. And she's like, no, you're not. She's like, that magazine's really important. There's an interview with somebody she knew was in the magazine, like somebody like. So she's like, they have an interview I haven't read it yet. She's like, you can't compare that to your stack of, illicit nudie magazines. And she's like, and I remember she was walking out. You're like, and you just went, shh, and you tore the first page, and you're like, go get the magazines now. And then she's like, and you're like walking behind her, and for every few seconds she didn't go out,
she would pause and like start to argue with me.
Yeah. And then I would get all the magazines out of the street. Oh.
Now, at what point did you pull out the video camera and start filming this whole thing, though?
I don't remember. I think it was very early on.
And we caused a scene, like as this was going on, we were drawing more and more people from the building, from the dorm room, to like view this like confrontation, this like Mexican standoff between me and Heather, where she like, I'm trying to force her to go outside, and I'm tearing page after page of her magazine out. And every time I would do it, she would scream my name at the top of her lungs, this like shrill screaming.
And it was really funny too, because you're like, I don't care if she throws them out. You didn't even care, but it was like the, I guess,
completely the principle of it.
It was the quote unquote principle of it.
The principle and the fact that they're like the community magazines. They're not. Right. It's not even like I don't give a shit. I know every inch of every page of those magazines at this point. Right. I've flipped through them a million times, but they're here for everybody. They're part of they're part of the draw of the room. Like I don't want to start losing people wanting to hang out here because all of a sudden the quantity of my nudie mags has dropped. So
it was like your Catcher in the Rye.
Plus what like she comes in my room, takes my shit, throws it out in the street. Like what the fuck is that?
That was definitely a memorable night.
The funniest part was that, like, I think a year later when I came back to visit you guys, and I think I stayed in your dorm room for 3 fucking weeks. I think we stole a bed from somewhere, just dragged it in there, and there were 3 beds in that dorm room. At one point, we were telling someone about it, and I told you to just go play the video for them, and Heather threw a fit, like, don't play it. She was so mad, she was so mad. Like, she didn't want you to play it. She started yelling at you. Oh, God, it's so funny. It makes my head hurt laughing talking about that.
She like that. That's one of the cool things is like, it's just like being in that kind of proximity with like, you just really like make good friends that way. Like, it's just like, she was such a like, cause she was part of the gang too. She was so fun and like, just like, I mean, it's crazy because it's like, I think people like remember like high school a lot, but I like so much of my like great friendships were from that school. Like you and her and Dave and like, like even, like Craig, like we just had so many, there was something special about that dorm. It was just, everyone kind of like got along. And I think cause we were all being like doing the same crazy ass work, you just kind of like have a camaraderie that's so fun.
Yeah,
it's so like it's great, and I miss that, and because I was hoping like coming out to Los Angeles you'd have a lot of that, and you do from time to time, but there's so much time in between movies, it just drives me crazy. Like you just spend so much time waiting, and it just really kills your enthusiasm. Where just there was so fun, we could just make art every night and like have like run out at like 3 a.m, and we would always like we'd hop out to like the Thai, Vietnamese restaurants, and then we'd stay up all night and we'd like go to like the French bakery at like 6 a.m. and get croissants and orange juices and just like sleep for 2 hours and then go to class. It was like crazy. It was so like productive and fun.
And we could do it too. Like, in fact, the amount of sleep we functioned on, and none of us were drug people. I mean, we drank sometimes, but like none of us were drug people. But I mean, I like just the amount of sleep that we were running on for. Yeah,
but it was like there was something about being like because it was always like I'd be in the room, Heather would be in the room, Dave would be in the room. Like it was something like we could like prop each other up and kind of keep going.
Oh, we were
keep
always
the energy going.
Oh, and especially like if you're like I said, like sometimes you were like working like on the other side of the building, but like every hour, either I was popping in on you or you were popping in on me, and just like taking that like 15 minutes to like see how the other guy was doing, and we'd take a break and we'd kind of look at each other's stuff and just, I mean, but the communal aspect, that's why I never like was too like eager to like get an apartment or something. I liked the dorms because it was like you just left your door open when you were home.
Yeah, me too.
You know, unless you were like, you know, fucking or doing something, but you know,
Right.
But like you'd let doors open and like anyone that was walking by, you know, could pop in, or you could pop in on anyone, and it was just like it was a blast. Even like the weird like foreign kids were fun.
Yeah.
Or like we had like one or two psychos that lived in our building too. Like Zuckman and
the police scanner.
And what's his name? The Doug who
oh yeah. Whatever happened to him?
I don't know. I just know like his full arc, like freshman year, because he was my age. He was like one of those guys that was like, you know, anti-gay person, this, that. And by senior year, he was gay. You know, it was like, it was like,
I think thou doth protest too much.
Right. Yeah. Oh God.
But it's such a unique experience, man. It's like you should do a whole podcast on RISD.
We could. Well, the next one you should. I mean, you
should get Heather. You should get Heather on the next one. Let her defend her position. she's like you misogynist pig. You exploiting women.
You and I should do it next week, and we should call someone else, like either Dave or we should call Craig about the fucking.
Oh yeah, no, we should totally do like a Rashomon. Like, what was your version of the story?
Right. Well, I would like everyone's versions of the night that I got fucking drunk to the gills, and I couldn't even go to like the
dance. You got so drunk they wouldn't let you on the bus.
They wouldn't let me on the bus, and then I woke up next to my bed I had thrown up all over my comic books. And I was like there was a photo of me like passed out on the floor. I still have. Because again, I was the one with the Polaroid camera, but because everyone came in my room, there are always like people taking these crazy photos. And of course, someone got their hands on that. I would like other people's, because I just remember the next year when we got on the buses, the cop was like, I remember you from last year. You were so fucking drunk. Now, can you imagine a guy that deals with names and faces all year round, as much as the cop does, remembered me from a year ago being that fucked up. Tremendous.
It's good times, man.
Yeah. All right. Well, I don't think anyone needs us blabbering more than this.
Yeah, this was definitely. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say this is probably your worst episode.
You'd be surprised. I mean, if people aren't into movies and comic book talk, somewhere in the middle we may have lost you. But if you hung tight till the end, that maybe it might have earned you. What was that award you won?
Unsung Hero Award.
Yeah, you might be the unsung hero of the week.
Yeah. God bless us, everyone.
If you made it to this. All right, Steve. Thank you very much for doing this. Maybe we'll do it again.
Thank you, Ben.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Is that it? Are we done with you?
I think so.
All right. Good. Go back to your girlfriend and your girlfriend life.
Have a good one, Ben.
Bye.
Bye.